And welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones, and we are so glad to have you here. Primary election day in New Jersey is coming up on June 10th, with the race for governor topping the ticket. All eyes are on the upcoming debates scheduled for this Sunday, May 18th, where we will see 5 Democrats debate, and on Tuesday, May 20th, where 3 Republicans will take the stage. The debates are being produced by On New Jersey, the New Jersey Globe, and Rider University. Now, I'm going to be moderating both of the 2.5-hour debates. Standing by is Alyssa Maurice. She's head of research at the Stockton Polling Institute at the William J. Hughes Center for Public Policy. She's going to be here to break down the latest polling, though. First, though, we're going to talk about what to expect to hear from the candidates during these debates. Joining me now is Dan Bryan and Alex Wilkes, regular columnist on the New Jersey Globe's Stomping Grounds. Dan is the Democrat, Alex is the Republican. Dan, Alex, good to see you both.
Good to see you, Laura.
All right, so Dan, let's start with the Democrats' bigger field. So we've got Ras Baraka, Mayor of Newark; Steve Fulop, Mayor of Jersey City; Josh Gottheimer, Congressman; Mikey Sherrill, Congresswoman; Steve Sweeney, former Senate President. They're all going to be on stage. So what's the message each of these needs to deliver in order to really stand out in this crowded field?
Yeah, well, it's funny you put it that way, to stand out in the crowded field. I think the messaging you've seen from these candidates has been fairly similar, right? Everyone is fighting Trump. Everyone wants affordability. There have been some specifics from different candidates, but a lot of them are kind of in the peripheral, right? They put it on their website. They put their policy positions on their websites. So how do they differentiate themselves? I think a lot of it is personality, right? So you've got a guy like Josh Gottheimer, who's really focused full in on affordability and cutting taxes. Steve Fulop has been trying to be a bit more of the progressive policy side, and he's putting, very heavy transit and other policies out there. I think Mikey Sherrill has been really at the meat and potatoes of what Democratic voters tend to care about, which is healthcare, which talks about affordability just as much as Josh Gottheimer, and really tries to play a down the middle, which is partly why she's seen so much success. Ras Baraka has been unabashedly progressive. He's probably been the furthest left candidate in this primary, again, when there's been a serious audience for it, especially in a 6-way race. Steve Sweeney's given you more of what we've seen from Steve Sweeney for the last 20 years, right? Which is a moderate centrist Democrat. And, he's fighting against higher taxes. He's fighting for affordability. He's come out against the Immigrant Trust Directive, which very few other candidates have been willing to say something like that. And Sean Spiller has tried to build his lane as, I'm going to fight Trump. It's been a fairly kind of generic Democrat stuff. So, some variations here and there, but you are hearing, Laura, a lot of the same types of messages from these candidates.
Right. And I'm glad you brought up Sean Spiller. He did not qualify for the ELEC debate because of his fundraising. And I was going to ask, how that impacts him not being on that stage. He was on the stage the last time we had a debate that we sponsored.
Listen, we are in a brave new world in campaign finance funding. I don't like it. I don't like the IE stuff. I don't like the super PAC stuff, but he is probably running the most aggressively soft side, we call it, in the business, right? IE heavy race where he's really not fundraising a ton into his hard side campaign. It's just going to be tens of millions of dollars through a super PAC through the soft side. Obviously, you need to fundraise on the hard side to qualify for this debate, so he didn't qualify. Does that affect him? I hate to burst everyone's bubble that's going to be watching this debate, and I'm one of them. Probably not. The amount of people that are watching these debates really are going to be fairly low, considering the amount of people that will be voting for this primary in this state. I will say it's a missed opportunity in order for him to get something that he can clip, send out, talk to his supporters about. So it's a bit of a missed opportunity. Does it affect him all that much? Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, we could have a whole half hour just talking about the changing landscape of how debates, how important they have been in the past and how relevant they are now with, everything that is available on social media. Alex, I want to go over to you with the Republicans. So we're going to see John Bramnick, state senator, Jack Ciattarelli, who is a former lawmaker, who this is his 3rd time running, and Bill Spadea, conservative radio show host. They're going to be debating. Now, can you talk a little bit about? We've seen them debate, and they are quite spirited, and they do really kind of stand out on stage. So, what do you think that we can expect to see from the 3 of them?
Well, can I just say, with apologies to my good friend Dan, that I am really excited as a Republican that this time around we are not delivering the clown car of candidates that we have normally over the last couple of years, that we're down to kind of a neat three that all fill a certain lane. And I am really looking forward to using some of the footage, some of the quotes that the Democrats have given us in a lot of these campaigns. But for the Republicans, look, I think that this is, like I said, a much neater primary. You have John Bramnick, who is unabashedly himself. He's a moderate who is willing to take on the president and to say things that are just statistically unpopular when you look at the polls and you look at where our base is. You have Bill Spadia, who people consider to be more to the right, and then Jack has really been able to carve out this nice middle lane. It's interesting because the last time that we were all together for the debate, we had Senator Ed Duran there, and that was an interesting dynamic because they couldn't quite sort of deliver that polar opposite end of each other than Jack in the middle, because there were four of them. But then when at the last debate, that was the case with David Cruz and PBS, and you actually saw quite a marked difference from our debate that we were a part of back in February. You saw Jack lean back in his chair, like his body language was totally different, and he was, of course, taking it seriously and responding. But the debate really became more about a debate between Bill Spadia and John Bramnick, which I have to imagine that as a matter of policy or a matter of strategy, I think those guys would probably be hoping to have taken on Jack more, to have been eating away at his sizable lead, as we've seen in the polls. So,
well, Alex, I want to follow up on that because Jack Ciattarelli just got the endorsement from President Trump. So is that maybe why he was taking a little bit of a back seat, letting them kind of, battle it out? Because, one would have thought at one point, Jack has changed his stance on President Trump. Bill Spadia has always been very supportive of President Trump. So how does this endorsement factor in?
I think it's huge. Obviously, the president is the leader of our party. He has high favorability among our base in the state. His first 100 days have been widely supported by the Republicans in our state. So I do think that for Jack, this was huge. I don't know if he knew in that debate that was coming. If he did, I think it would be a very rare circumstance, having dealt with candidates who are potentially on the receiving end of a Trump endorsement. They usually keep you guessing like right until the end, until he actually posts the tweet or the Truth Social post, and it's very nerve-wracking. I've had to draft press releases at like 1 o'clock in the morning,
Right.
thanking the president for his support for candidates. So, but I think he was relaxed because at that point, he knew that from the polling and from his own internals that he was well ahead, and he knew that his attacks had effectively put Bill Spadia, I think the next most competitive person in the race, really on his heels, and so I think that he was relaxed in that debate, which was a change from the last debate where he really came out and everyone was super pugnacious and it was a really hot debate. It felt like almost uncomfortable to be in the room, if you guys remember. But
yeah. One of the things, like you see Bill Spadia when he's out on the campaign trail or he's on media, whatever he's doing, he's talking a lot about how to make New Jersey more affordable. And Dan, I'll go back over to you. Bill Spadia's talking about doing a New Jersey DOGE. So the voters, no doubt, are very frustrated with high property taxes, New Jersey transit failures, rising cost. So can we talk a little bit about how the Democrats are connecting with the voters, how they are, how they're getting their message out? Because a lot of what they're talking about is very similar. So how do they connect with voters? You look at the Republican side, and again, Bill Spady is saying, here's how I'm going to do it. Jack Ciattarelli is out with his message, and you, of course, have John Bramnick as well. So can you talk a little bit about how the Democrats are tailoring that message and connecting really on these bread and butter issues that affect New Jerseyans on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, it's a great question, Laura. I mean, listen, to state the obvious here, President Trump is dominating both sides of this election, right? The Republicans are, outside of John Bramnick, to his credit, trying to talk about how they are the closest thing to Trump in the field, and the Democrats are talking about how hard they would fight Trump. I think the difference between this election and the one that we went through in 2017 is I think voters today are viewing opposition to Trump, Democratic voters, opposition to Trump as the floor, not the ceiling. Basically, what else you got for me? Sure, you're going to oppose the president. What else do you got for me? I think the issues that you see come up fairly often, NJ Transit, frustrations with NJ Transit, affordability, we've got a utility rate hike coming this summer, things like that. I think that Governor Murphy, over his past 7.5 years, has accomplished an incredible amount that the Democratic base has been looking for in terms of equal pay, pay equity, fully funding the pension, funding education, list goes on and on. So kind of that, a lot of the meat and potato stuff here is either in progress or done. So how does the next Democratic candidate come around and connect to the voters? I really think we're going to be talking about affordability. I think we'll be talking about providing better services. I think we're going to be talking through, NJ Transit, when you talk to DMV, things like that. Housing, right? Building housing, things like that. So really things that affect people on a day-to-day basis, which is, Democrats in the past decade, especially in the first Trump term, where it was really kind of broader stuff. It was broader, bigger stuff, bigger ideas. A lot of that in New Jersey is done now. So they're going to be coming a bit more down to the ground, talking about what is affecting people on an everyday basis, real life. I think it's been really interesting to see that the plans that the candidates have been putting out, it's been very, very real world stuff.
Yeah. So, Alex, when it comes to a primary, it's like a family feud, right? You got to win the primary in order to get to the general election. But how do the Republicans, and Dan, I'll pose this to you as well, how do the Republicans do that without bloodying and battering each other so they really have a chance in November? We see New Jersey kind of trending a little bit more purple, a little bit more red, people would say. And the governor's, who's in office kind of ping pongs back and forth, Democrat to Republican. So the Republicans, have, Jack Ciattarelli came really close last time. So with this debate coming up and their performance, is there a pitfall that all of the candidates need to be watching out for if the Republicans want to win come November, no matter who their candidate is?
I think that Democrats in the state had us believe that President Trump was a liability for candidates here far longer than he actually was. And the election, or last year's election, really bore that out when, while spending no money here, he lost by a shocking 6 points. I mean, to put that in perspective, Kamala Harris did better in Virginia than she did in New Jersey, which I think that a lot of people wouldn't have been anticipated. And that means, practically speaking, that for the Democrats, a lot of the unaffiliated voters and some of their voters came out and supported the president. So I think that, these scaremonger tactics with the mail that, looks scary with President Trump and the candidate on it. I don't think that they can run that same playbook this time. I think that they know that there are people out there that are supportive of the president's policies. And if you put them on a mail piece attacking one candidate and in support of your candidate, that you might find yourself on the opposite side of that voter. So I don't think that there's really a pitfall for these candidates. I think that, and as a matter of fact, I think that they need to come forward with a clear message and a clear vision in the same way that President Trump was able to do in 2024. We knew exactly where he stood. Any person in this country, if you asked them, could recite to you what President Trump stood for in 5 words or less. For the Democrats, I think that they have many more opportunities to put themselves far to the left of New Jersey voters, where they are at this point, and to make damaging statements that will run counter to this nice affordability narrative that they are now trying to put out there, as if they were not part of the problem that caused it in the first place here.
So Dan, final thoughts for you, and then we'll go to Alex. Looking at both debates, who's under the most pressure really to deliver that knockout performance, and why, just heading into these debates?
I think if you're looking at the polls, it's going to be the candidates that really haven't been able to make up enough ground, and haven't been able to break through. The polling in this primary on both sides, really, Democrat and Republican, have been fairly static. You've seen a little bit of shuffling at the bottom, but the candidates at the top have kind of stayed at the top within a few points in the margin of error. So if I am a candidate that's been in this race for 6 months, 8 months, haven't really been able to get out of the single digits, or maybe I'm in the low double digits and no one's really taking me serious as a contender, I think it is absolutely critical that they come in and do a knockout blow. I think for those candidates at the top, they really want to just make sure that they're not giving their opponents anything that they can clip, that they're not, that there's no missteps, that they're not stepping on any rakes. But outside of that, I think they're just looking to just kind of come in and do their job. And, if the headlines afterwards or the debate was a wash, they're fine. But if I'm a candidate at the bottom, one that really hasn't been able to break through, you really do need to deliver that knockout punch if people want to take you seriously as a contender.
Alex, final thoughts, what you're going to be looking for, what you hope to see.
Yeah, like Dan said, I think that for Jack on the Republican side, it's a do no harm debate. This is where he just wants to articulate that closing argument for Republican voters. He wants to tout that endorsement from President Trump, and just not make any missteps. Which, truthfully, I think given his just experience on the campaign trail for the last 5 years that we've seen, it's difficult for him to sort of go off message because he is so used to being on. I thought a particularly striking moment from the last debate was when Bill Spadea couldn't really say whether or not he would be for considering ideology in terms of the Supreme Court pick. That felt like a stalling moment that in an ordinarily close debate, you might spend some money attacking him on. Otherwise, of course, the Ciattarelli campaign is going to more focus on that Trump endorsement in their paid media. But I think that Bill Spadea, of course, is the one that has to come out and has to, take some more shots at Ciattarelli that he can hope will overcome that Trump endorsement. But I think it's going to be admittedly an uphill climb. How do you both support the president but then criticize his choice in an election? I've been on that opposite side, and it's not fun. I can tell you that.
Never a dull moment in New Jersey politics. Alex, Dan, thank you for taking the time for your insight and analysis, and we'll look forward to seeing you there.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Laura.
Food brings people together. On Cooking with Copel, we combine culinary creativity with good conversation. This spring, we've invited all the candidates for governor to come into the Montclair kitchen, teach me to cook their favorite dish, and give the people of New Jersey a chance to get to know the individuals who would lead our state. It's going to be a fun and exciting way to get really involved in the democratic process. Can't wait to see you there.
Welcome back to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones, and we're talking about the upcoming debates for New Jersey governor. So we're going to dive into some recent polls from Stockton University. Joining me now is Alyssa Maurice, head of research at Stockton Polling Institute at the William J. Hughes Center for Public Policy. She's here to break it all down. Alyssa, thank you for being here. It's good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we've got the governor's race. The governor's debates are just around the corner. So let's talk a little bit about your research, the key issues you're seeing that you expect candidates to perhaps focus on, and what the people of New Jersey are saying with some of your recent polls. What can you tell us?
Sure. So I'll start with some of our latest polling on the state budget because I think it's all relevant to the gubernatorial race that we're seeing. So we know that New Jersey is in the midst of budget negotiations right now. The state's going to have to make some tough decisions given that we are facing a looming budget deficit. And so we presented voters with various proposals to increase revenue for the state and decrease spending in order to balance the budget. And we asked them which they would support. And so we saw, I'll start with the revenue side. We saw that the policies that had the most support was increasing taxes on online gambling and sports betting at 58%, followed by increasing taxes on wealthy individuals at 55%. And we heard in the latest gubernatorial debate or Democratic primary debate for governor that was touted by some candidates. So those two policies were the only ones to garner majority support. They were followed fairly closely by raising taxes on alcohol and cigarettes at 49% and raising taxes on corporations at 48%. Now, onto the cutting spending side, that was less popular overall. To put that in perspective, the policy with the highest support was cutting the number of government employees at 37%. As we can see, that's not nearing a majority there. So overall, proposals to cut spending are far less popular among the voters. It's a tougher sell for them.
Okay, so that's really interesting because when you listen to the debates, you listen to a lot of the candidates, especially I'll go on the Republican side. Bill Spady is talking a lot about a New Jersey version of DOGE. We're seeing that at the federal level. What you're saying is that isn't really what people that are voting are really concerned about cutting.
Yeah, so among that 37% of overall voters who are in favor of cutting the number of government employees, that was driven largely by Republican voters. So I will say among Republican voters, it's a winning message. 73% of Republicans were in favor of doing something like that. But among Democrats and independents, it was far less popular. And so while that might be a winning message in a Republican primary, it's going to be a tough sell in the general election when you have to win over those independents.
How much of a difference do you think these debates make, especially with the media landscape changing so much when it comes to what you see when you're polling individuals? How close are they paying attention to the debates? Or is this the time they really do tune in because everything is so tailored for social media? You don't have as many reporters. There's not the robust New Jersey press corps. So can you talk a little bit to that, the impact of debates having on the general electorate, and if that will really change a lot?
Yeah, so it certainly helps with name recognition, especially in a more crowded primary like the Democratic primary. They're all fighting for attention, right? And then you have some candidates who need to take this opportunity at the debates to differentiate themselves from other candidates. You look at Baraka and Fulop are both competing for that progressive wing of the party. And so they take this opportunity to sort of make those distinctions between each other. And we also noticed that Fulop in particular took some shots at Cheryl during the latest Democratic primary debate, probably in an attempt to peel off some of those more mainstream Democratic voters who may be voting for Cheryl. So we can kind of see the dynamics play out at these debates. It's also an opportunity to talk about the biggest issues. The other issue that we asked about in our poll was housing costs and utility costs. And we saw in the debate that was a hot topic in both the Democratic and the Republican debates that we've recently seen. So,
can you just briefly, I know we're kind of short on time, just talk a little bit about just some of the other polls that you're doing, the issues that you're monitoring here in New Jersey, and where people can go to find out more about your polling institute at Stockton.
Sure. So again, those big issues right now are housing costs and energy costs. They're going to be even more relevant after the electric rate hikes next month. And we saw that voters overwhelmingly agree it's a crisis in New Jersey and they want government officials to do more about it. In terms of housing costs, the policy that was the most popular was increasing property tax relief at 62%. And Democrats overall were more in favor of any policy to address this crisis. They have an all of the above approach to it. Among Republicans, the only policy that had majority support was increasing property tax relief. So it is going to be tougher on the Republican side to find a message that resonates on the housing crisis. And for more info, I encourage everyone to take a look at our website, stockton.edu/Hughes Center, to dig into these poll results more.
Because one of the other polls that you've had out there had to do with federal health agencies. Can you talk a little bit about that in the time that we have remaining? A couple minutes left.
Sure, yeah. So we asked about some of the Make America Healthy Again policies that we're hearing from Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and this administration. And we found that one big unifying issue actually is eliminating food dyes from our food supply. Most New Jersey voters are on board with that. We saw this administration recently announced they're going to work with the food industry to try to voluntarily eliminate those from our supply of food. And really, that's a bipartisan issue. Everyone is in support of making those changes to our food supply. Vaccines is where New Jersey voters tend to diverge from RFK Jr. They are more supportive of vaccines overall. And although Republicans do have higher rates of vaccine hesitancy, even here in New Jersey.
Well, Alyssa, we thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and talk about the polls. We really appreciate your time and look forward to having you back on another time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. And that'll do it for today. I'm Laura Jones. Thanks so much for watching New Jersey Politics. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.
Food brings people together. On Cooking with Copel, we combine culinary creativity with good conversation. This spring, we've invited all the candidates for governor to come into the Montclair kitchen, teach me to cook their favorite dish, and give the people of New Jersey a chance to get to know the individuals who would lead our state. It's going to be a fun and exciting way to get really involved in the democratic process. Can't wait to see you there.